Pandora met her boyfriend back in high school and they dated for almost 4 years into their college years. They were both really into bondage, and one night they started getting into the usual fun, but just as he got Pandora tied to the bed, he said, "I'm breaking up with you." Then he walked out, leaving Pandora tied up, and shut and locked the door behind him. Luckily, Pandora's roommate had brought her key with her. She got back after 4 hours.
A couple of years ago, Emoji dated a Native American guy named A. One day, she was telling her aunt about him and noticed her aunt kept referring to him as Indian. Emoji kept correcting her, saying A was Native American. Her aunt said she wasn't sure what kind of Indian she meant. Then, to demonstrate, she put her hand over her mouth and did a racist impression of a Native American cry, and then impersonated a convenience store worker like a poo from The Simpsons. Emoji cringed so hard and wished she wasn't related to this woman.
Around MKLM's junior year, there was gonna be a homecoming dance. He wasn't really interested in dances or many activities the school had, but the theme of the dance was Masquerade. Sounded cool, but still not interesting. Then, 2 days before the dance, they got an announcement saying that anybody attending the Masquerade dance is not allowed to wear masks during the dance, just so they can identify who's who. They literally banned people wearing masks for a Masquerade-themed dance. Masks being the point of having a Masquerade event. The dance, as MKLM was told, was just some regular dance that had posters and covers that said Masquerade Dance. He could just not believe the idiocy the school staff had made of themselves.
Once, when Sidious was in 4th grade, there was this girl he really liked. He finally decided to make his move, even though she had a reputation of being a sadist. Sid went to talk to her and wanted to say,
"Hello, my love."
but he was so nervous that he said,
"Hi, I like to eat burritos. Bye."
The next day they laughed at what he said to her the previous day and are still friends to this day.
Pringle got himself into a conversation about whether Transformers would have life insurance or car insurance. Pringle decided it would probably be both, but 2 burly guys were arguing about it, and it escalated into a fistfight. Pringle tried to break it up, but one of the guys went a little too rough and Pringle left school that day with a black eye.
When Dolan was folding laundry with his family, he saw his mom's dress and decided it would be fun to try it on. So, while no one was looking, Dolan went to the bathroom and put it on. He looked at himself in a full-length mirror and actually thought he looked pretty good, so he started to model for a bit. But then his siblings opened the door and saw him in a weird pose, so they all started to laugh and cackle. Embarrassed, Dolan slammed the door shut, took off the dress, and tried to forget it. But even 7 years later, nobody else forgot it. Whenever it comes up, Dolan still gets embarrassed, but he still does think he makes a damn good model.
Princess Proton's ex, Spinal Bomb, did something crazy. He'd always been weird, and she always felt weird being around him. But she decided to stay with him anyway. A couple weeks after they began dating, Princess Proton broke up with him. One night after the breakup, he FaceTimed her. She watched as Spinal Bomb carved her name into his leg. And that was the last time she ever spoke to him.
So, I was always an average kid that nobody really understood. My parents were always giving me commands, but they decided that they were going to hire a babysitter. We'll just call her Vicky. Once, she called my mother and told her I broke her vase, torched the piano, and wrote "My parents stink" and Dinkelberg rules all over the living room wall. She even recorded me saying I never stole from my mom's purse and clipped it to make it sound like I did steal from my mom's purse, and then threatened to blackmail me with it. Luckily though, I had 2 magical goldfish who were there to help me through the hard time.
When I was about 10 years old, I noticed that the computer room door was shut. I opened it up because I wanted to play some Diablo, and I noticed my mother there, and she covered the screen with a piece of paper and told me to get out. Just get out of there! Even at that young age, I knew that you didn't hide the computer screen unless you had something salacious on there. Not emailing an old friend or checking your bank account, something naughty. Also, only a really guilty person would try covering a screen with a piece of paper. Anybody in their right mind would just turn it off. Anyhow, long story short, I found out that she was having cyber sex with some guy in Kansas, and my parents got divorced soon after. But hey, on the plus side, with her gone, I got that much more time to play Diablo. Got level 50 in friggin' no time.
The creepiest thing a stranger said to Pandora was when she was 7 years old. One day, she went to the park with her mom. While she was playing on the playground, she saw a man sitting alone. Pandora went over to the man and asked if he was okay. The man just turned to her and said, "You see that boy digging a hole in the sandbox? Anyone can dig a hole, but it takes a man to hide the body." Terrified, Pandora ran back to her mom.
The dumbest thing Civil Spider believed when he was little was during the 1st and 2nd grade. This was the stage when girls were like aliens or some sort of foreign species, so having a girlfriend at that age was like being a king. But he had this weird idea of what a girlfriend actually was. Civil Spider thought that every girl he talked to was his girlfriend, so after speaking with a girl, he'd go up to all his buddies and say things like,
"Yeah, she's my girlfriend."
This went on until he told his cousin all about all of his girlfriends, and his cousin then proceeded to explain what that word actually meant.
When Pandora was 15, the kids at school used to tease her about having a flat ass. One day after school, Pandora went to her room to change and talk to her pet turtle, Coco. As she got dressed, she asked Coco if he thought her ass looked good. Then, feeling silly, she picked Coco up, held him up against her butt, and said,
"Do you like that? Huh? Do you?"
Coco was not amused. At that moment, Pandora's grandma appeared in the doorway and saw Pandora holding a turtle up to her bare butt. Pandora's grandma gasped, dropped her groceries, and slowly backed out of the room. Pandora pulled up her pants and ran after her. She tried to explain, but Pandora's grandma now thinks that Pandora's generation is completely fucked up.
When Hellbent was 13, his neighbors asked him to babysit their son and daughter. He usually spent his time playing with their son, but on this particular night, the daughter was crying for attention. Hellbent felt bad, so he decided to play dolls with her. This made her brother really jealous. He started having a tantrum, but Hellbent told him to stop being a baby and to let his sister have some attention. The boy stormed off. A few minutes later, Hellbent heard footsteps in the hallway. He turned around and saw the little boy standing there looking very, very mad. In his hands, he was holding a small Boy Scout's axe. Hellbent kicked the door closed, and the boy started hacking away at it. Hellbent threw his weight against the door and cried out for the boy to stop, saying,
I'm sorry, I'll play with you!"
Luckily, the boy's parents came home at that exact moment. The boy ran into his room, and Hellbent raced downstairs to tell them what their little serial killer son had done. Needless to say, that was the last time he babysat for that family. Here's Johnny.
One day, Legna was late to work. He was really dazed from watching The Walking Dead all night. As he walked down the hall, he opened a door that he thought was his office. It turned out to be a boardroom where executives and representatives were holding a meeting. Legna's boss said, "This is the employee of the year I was telling you about." Everyone in the room began muttering phrases such as, "He's a fine young man," and "He looks like a hard worker." Confused and overwhelmed, Legna's body self-destructed. He peed his pants, puked on an executive, and almost pooped his pants. Despite being fired for the incident, Legna and his former boss are still cool and even joke about it to this day. He was a teenager. Nixon was hanging out with a girl he liked. Nixon had a crush on this girl for the longest time, and they were finally alone together. He wanted to see if she would like to go out on a date, but he was super nervous, and instead of saying, "Do you want to go out on a date?" he sort of aggressively said, "Do you want to get out of my face?" She was confused and upset. Even though he tried to apologize and explain himself, she ran from his house and he never got the opportunity to ask her again.
One time, my sister asked me who clogged the toilet. And you know me, I'm a busy guy. I don't have time to answer questions like that, so I said I don't know. And seeing as she didn't bother me about it, I assumed the problem fixed itself. Later in the evening, I had to press my powerful posterior against that precious porcelain pooper. And after I dropped a load of horrors untold, I gave the toilet a confident flush. And that poor toilet overflowed in about half a second. There's poop water splashing all over the place. I'm wading through it, trying to plunge it as hard as I can. It's getting in my face and in my mouth, and I'm crying. I'm thinking, why? Why is this happening? Why me? And I realize it's all my fault. I did this. I deserve all of this. So what's the lesson here? Well, it's that some secrets shouldn't be kept. And proper fiber intake is important for all ages.
When Honeybits was 11, she and her little sister had to live with their aunt and cousin for a month. When their aunt made school lunches, she would give her own daughter a sandwich, piece of fruit, a drink, and a big snack. But Honeybits and her sister would only get a tiny apple and a tangerine. She wouldn't even give them breakfast, so they had to get through a whole day of school on just 2 tiny pieces of fruit. Worse still, one night their aunt decided Honeybits' sister was being too noisy, so she gagged her with a sock and duct taped her hands and feet together. When her mom came back, Honeybits told her about everything their evil aunt did. This caused a huge family fight, and they still don't speak to this day. Amazingly, before they walked out, Honeybits' aunt tried to charge her sister for the kids' food and board. But Honeybits' mom just laughed and said, "Food? You didn't even feed them." I guess you can't choose your family.
One of the weirdest things I've ever done to impress my crush was definitely the time I tried to sing a Beauty and the Beast song. I wasn't an avid singer, not at all actually. But she was a really nice looking girl, and I really wanted to be her boyfriend at the time. I tried everything. I would try chocolates, candy, buy her stuff, and it never actually worked. Till one day in class, I randomly went up to her and I said, After that, I swore she was amazed by my singing and my godlike enthusiasm. She definitely wanted me, is what I told myself. But she laughed, and then she said, "That's not Beauty and the Beast, that's Lion King, you stupid idiot." And then she left me and laughed.
Once when Sidious was 10 years old, he was in the bathroom about to take a shower. Once he got naked, everything went pitch black. Apparently there was a blackout. He didn't want to shower in the dark, so rather than try and find his clothes, he felt his way to the door and left the bathroom totally naked. His dad and sister were in a nearby room looking for flashlights. None of them could see each other's silhouettes, and needless to say, everyone was pretty surprised when the lights abruptly came back and Sidious forgot he wasn't wearing any clothes. But luckily he has a tail, so he can immediately hide all his private parts, because the tail is very bushy and you can't see it through it. I assume. I've never seen an animal person before, but I assume that's how it works.
Snoopy actually met her girlfriend through YouTube. She commented on Snoopy's video and she found out they lived in the same small country. They started chatting through Skype and Snoopy fell for her quickly. After about 5 months, the girl confessed to her and she was shocked. They decided to go out with each other. They've met up many times now and are planning to get into the same college.
When they were teenagers, Dolan's mysterious older brother once told Dolan that he would give him $30 if he walked up to a stranger and gave them a boop on the head. Thinking it was way too easy, Dolan looked around and booped the nearest stranger he could find. But the stranger started freaking out, screaming about Satan and how Dolan was possessed. He started throwing his hands in the air like a lunatic and then ran in the opposite direction. Luckily, his brother gave him $20 extra because the guy went berserk. But hey, he earned $50 that day.
When she was in high school, Ladybot came down with a throat infection during a band trip to New York City and Washington, D.C. She couldn't talk without coughing and couldn't get anything down except for milkshakes and tea. Being from Texas, Ladybot and her bandmates had to drive 32 hours to New York City, then to Washington, D.C. She had family in the D.C. area and they wanted to take her to the doctor. However, the directors of the band refused. They didn't even let Ladybot see the on-hand medic they had brought with them. When Ladybot was on the verge of passing out, the nasty directors didn't even allow her to call her family. Upon returning to her home, she lay unconscious for 3 days. Ladybot was eventually taken to the hospital where she had to have blood drawn and go through a series of tests. The doctors found out she had a super strain of bacteria in her throat and had to give her seriously high doses of antibiotics.
Pringles' worst joke goes something like, a party of adventurers walked into a witch's cottage. A black cat leapt onto the table. Hey look, one adventurer said with enthusiasm, it's one of those witch's cats. Actually, stated the more educated one in the bunch, they are referred to as familiars. The third person, who was a little bit dull, looked at the cat in confusion and mused, it doesn't look very familiar to me. Yep, that's it. That's the joke. Did you laugh? You didn't laugh.
One time, Ramona was hanging out at a friend's house when she got a strange message from a woman on Facebook. The woman said that she had recently had sex with Ramona's fiance and that she wanted Ramona to know. Ramona's scumbag fiance had been going around telling girls he was single so that he could sleep with them. Luckily, this woman had found him on Facebook and saw he was engaged. Ramona was devastated, but at least she got out of that shitty relationship before they got married.
When Spinal Bomb was little, his mom bought a brand new paper scanner. Spinal Bomb thought it was so cool, and it wasn't long before he got an idea. Spinal Bomb put the scanner on the floor, pulled his pants down, and slapped his privates on the scanner. Just when the scan was finished, Spinal Bomb's mom came downstairs and asked what he was doing. Spinal Bomb said he wasn't doing anything! But just as he did, the paper came out of the scanner. Spinal Bomb's mom picked the paper up, saw what was on it, and told him to never do that again. Luckily, he got away with only getting yelled at. I hope she at least hit that thing with some Windex or something.
When Andy was 14, she went with her boyfriend Adam to the 8th grade dance. On the way there, he was tense. Every time Andy asked him what was wrong, he would nervously say that he was fine and look out the window of the car, shaking the whole time. When they arrived, he went immediately to the bathroom, and when he came back, he said he felt better, but that obviously wasn't true. They danced, then ate, then danced some more. At the end of the dance, Adam started leaning in to kiss Andy, but then he barfed all over her blue expensive dress. He just stood there for a minute before saying, we're done. I'm sorry, but this is too embarrassing. Then he barfed on her some more. Froggy was 12 when she hung out with her badass older brother. One day during recess, Froggy and her brother were practicing baseball when a large, scruffy-looking man walked up behind them. He pulled out a machete and charged at Froggy, but her brother immediately jumped in front of her and hit him on the head with his metal baseball bat. The man lied on the ground unconscious with a broken nose. After that, Froggy's brother picked her up and ran to the teacher. When the police arrived, they arrested the man. Apparently, he assaulted his family, which explained the stains on his coat.
Mimi Up was on the train heading home from school with her friend. Having just finished their final exam for the year, they were talking about their usual topics until a bunch of guys joined them on the train. They were speaking in Japanese, and Mimi knew enough of it to overhear bits and pieces of their conversation. While listening, Mimi started hearing words and phrases related to porn and smut and stuff related to that. Some of the parts she understood really well were bizarre. Like one of the guys saying things like, "A banana can't fit in a hamster's mouth." Mimi spent the rest of the train ride trying not to laugh, so as not to blow her cover. Tulip was in 5th grade when he thought a girl would think of him as manly if he were tolerant to pain. So, stupid idiot him decided to climb to the tallest point of the playground, then slipped. He fell all the way down the wood chips, right in front of her. Tulip fought back tears and got up, brushed himself off, and walked away without saying a thing. No teacher saw him, but he was labeled a tough guy for the rest of his time at that school. That night, Tulip found 7 wood chips embedded in his thighs. It was really fucking painful. It was also a miracle that he didn't sprain his ankle. Suffice to say, he never dated that girl.
When she was 6, Princess Proton's mom always told her to make sure that she turned on the fan in the bathroom whenever she showered. That way, mold wouldn't grow on the walls. So one day, Princess Proton forgot to turn on the fan while showering like she always did. Her mom went into the bathroom, pulled her out of the shower, and dragged her down the stairs. She sat her down at the kitchen table and said, "Since you never turn on the fan in the bathroom." That was when her mom brought 3 fans to the table and turned them on full blast. Because she was naked and soaking wet, the air felt very cold to Princess Proton. She still thinks that that punishment was much better than being spanked. When Spinal Bomb was in 8th grade, he had a speech impediment, and while struggling with this, had his first crush. He was a shy kid to begin with, and while having this speech impediment, he didn't like talking at all. But speaking with her was hell. One time he screwed up bad when he tried to impress her. He gave her a plastic flower and tried to say,
"Your beauty is like a plastic flower, it'll never die."
But he ended up saying,
"You're plastic like a flower."
Right after that, he dug himself into a bigger hole by trying to constantly say sorry, but it was coming out of
"Sorry."
She ended up actually laughing and hugging him, saying that it was the sweetest thing that she's ever encountered.
Ramona was trying to diet and exercise and had been sharing her efforts on social media. One day, she noticed a woman was starting to follow her efforts. That would have been fine, except the woman would keep sending her the message,
"You want to know how to lose weight? Drink Skinny Man's sperm!
Ramona would just stare at her comments, shocked. It took 3 years for the woman to stop stalking her online, sending her comments and telling her to join her study where women were drinking Skinny Men's sperm. Ramona doesn't even know what was going on in that woman's head. Probably wasn't a woman.
Pandora and Hellbent may be super in love now, but it wasn't always this way. When they first met, they hated each other. They saw each other each day because they had a mutual friend, but every time they spoke, Hellbent would act like a total dick to her, and they would end up arguing and calling each other names. One week, everyone except Hellbent and Pandora went on a field trip up to DC. Since regular classes were cancelled, their teacher made them do quiet study together in a small classroom. This was where Pandora got to know the real Hellbent. For the first time they had a real conversation and they listened to each other instead of arguing. It wasn't long before they were hanging out together by choice. Their friends started to ship them and they encouraged Hellbent to ask Pandora out. When Hellbent finally found some courage, he told Pandora that she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Flash forward to today, and Pandora is happily in a relationship with her one-time high school bully.
A long time ago, when Meanie was on the bus to go home, a tipsy homeless man stumbled onto the bus. He walked very clumsily and had a crooked grimace on his face. He constantly went from seat to seat, sitting next to people. At one point, he even leaned in close to a lady's face like he was about to kiss her. Everyone, including Meanie, sat in shock and silence. Eventually, he sat across from Meanie and started arguing and yelling at cars passing by like he was delusional. As she was about to leave the bus, Meanie glanced back to see him stroke and lick the bus pole. He said to everyone, "Isn't she beautiful?"
When Melissa once worked at a daycare, there was a little girl that would do a thing called egg up. Egging up meant she would lay face down in fetal position with her forehead touching the floor and her knees tucked under her chest. Every time she got scared, she would do this. The problem was that everything scared her. The shallow end of the pool? Scary. The movie theater? Terrifying. Nap time? Horrific. The sound of a flushing toilet? Don't even get her started. It was never resolved either. For the duration of her time at the daycare, it was the norm to see her curled up on the floor. Poor Aggie.
Dolan was traveling on a mostly empty train, which was lucky since he had a load of stuff that just would not fit on the floor. Not too long into the trip, the train pulled up to a stop and a large man walked on. In one of his hands was a styrofoam cup filled to the brim with what was probably water. In the other hand was a pamphlet held between his fingers. Now, without paying for a ticket, he just walked up to a seat, the seat next to Dolan, the one with all of his stuff on it. He just quietly stood in the row and stared at him and his things. Dolan didn't want any trouble, so he squeezed all of his possessions on top of him. It was awkward as hell, but
you gotta do what you gotta do.
While the guy was looking away, Dolan managed to catch a glimpse of the pamphlet, and it was a pamphlet for a mental hospital. It explained a lot, but it made the already long train ride feel even longer while also putting him on edge the entire trip.
Mimi Up was an extreme bargain hunter who stocked stuff under her bed. Her friends would refer to her as their store and would always ask her for stuff if they were short on it. One day, Mimi's roommate wanted some detergent that was shoved all the way to the back under the bed in the corner. Mimi started to pull things out and crawled under the bed. She found the detergent she wanted, but got stuck trying to get it out. Mimi's friend tried to pull her out, but couldn't, so she went to get help. More friends came and tried pulling her out, but they failed, and they all kept laughing about the fact that she was basically just talking legs. After about 30 minutes, they called the landlord. He showed up and laughed at how stupid it was. He took the mattress off the bed and pulled her out that way. Mimi gave him some free detergent for helping her, and then she got a stick for getting stuff out from under the bed.